Dorothy, 28, stands before a corridor mirror in 1957, pressing a bobby pin into her starched white cap before the morning shift begins. White dress, polished shoes, a small name pin that reads D. Simmons, RN. The uniform is identical to every other nurse on the floor. The pin says the same thing, but the hospital she is about to walk into has a second rule book. And number 12 will show you exactly what that uniform could and could not protect. Number 12, the cap that wasn't equal. The cap looked like a symbol of arrival. In the 1950s, the nursing cap was the most visible marker of professional rank. Which school you trained at, what grade you had reached. Graduate nurses wore white, student nurses wore gray. But the cap was not neutral. At Harlem Hospital School of Nursing, black student nurses received standard caps, rather than the prestigious Bellevue-style design given to white graduates at affiliated programs. Nobody put it in the handbook. Dorothy's cap looks exactly like the others from across the room. Up close, it tells a different story about where she trained. The soft click of the bobby pin, the tap of a heel turning from the mirror. The cap was real. The welcome it announced was not. Number 11, the name nobody used. Her name pin says D. Simmons, RN. The RN is accurate. The license is verified. The training is complete. She has passed the same state boards as every other registered nurse in the building. In many hospitals, none of that changed what she was called. Black nurses were addressed by their first name, Dorothy. The title was not courtesy. It was institutional recognition. Withholding it was a message delivered in plain language. She had the title on paper. The next rule was about what she was allowed to touch. Number 10, the ward she was assigned. In many hospitals, black nurses were assigned to black patient wards, often in basements, often in overcrowded units. The assignment itself was a rule. Being placed on the correct ward meant being placed on the colored ward. Geography as hierarchy. The ward assignment looked like logistics. It was geography as hierarchy. Number 9, the patient who closed the door. The door is closed before she reaches it. White patients could request not to be treated by black nurses. There was no policy protecting her from this. It was handled without comment, a rule that had no official name. The next rule determined who could choose to enter the profession at all. Number 8, the school that said no. In North Carolina, between 1896 and 1965, only 11 schools of nursing accepted black students. Most were closed entirely. Dorothy earned her cap despite this. She trained in a program with fewer resources and passed the boards anyway. The protection was gone before the work was done. The school was a closed door. She got in. The next rule was waiting. Number 7, the membership that changed nothing. The dues envelope arrives. The card fits in a wallet behind the nursing license. Dorothy pays what is owed. Mary Elizabeth Carnegie, later the first black nurse to serve as a voting board member of a state nursing association, first editor of nursing research, eventual president of the American Academy of Nursing, recalled holding only courtesy membership in the Florida Nurses Association before 1949. Her words, no rights and privileges other than paying dues. In 16 southern states and Washington, D.C., the American Nurses Association's state-based membership structure excluded black nurses by design. You could belong. You could pay. The card was the same card. The doors it opened were not. The small rectangle behind the license. The dues receipt in the envelope. A professional credential that looked identical and functioned differently. The card was in her pocket. The next rules didn't stay in her pocket. Until now, the rules lived in corridors and name badges, and the small humiliations a professional woman learns to absorb without showing. The next rules didn't stay in the hallway. They went into the pay office, the supervisory chart, the promotion board, and they didn't need to be impolite to do their work. Number 6. The position she couldn't hold. The bulletin board near the nurse's station carries the charge nurse assignments in clean-typed letters. Dorothy has the seniority. She has the clinical record. In white hospitals of the 1950s, charge nurse positions, head nurse positions, and supervisory roles were almost universally held by white nurses. Carnegie documented the near-total absence of black nurses from hospital leadership structures throughout this period. Nobody gave Dorothy a formal explanation. Nobody needed to. The chart simply did not have her name. The empty line where another name appeared told her what the institution had already decided about the ceiling of her career. Not because of what she could do, because of what the institution was willing to recognize. The typed names, the empty line, The bulletin board that got updated every quarter and said the same thing every time. Number 5. The envelope with the wrong number. The pay envelope is the same brown paper rectangle every nurse on the floor receives at the end of the pay period. The outside is identical. The 1960s Civil Rights Campaign at the Medical College Hospital of South Carolina specifically documented the reality Black women health workers had long understood: licensed, trained, qualified professionals doing equivalent work and receiving lower wages, a pay gap that had no official policy name and appeared nowhere in the employment contract. It was inside the envelope, printed in ink, official. The dry rustle of brown paper, the fluorescent light above a payroll window, a number that doesn't match the hours or the skill or the credential pinned to her chest. The work was real. The ceiling was also real. Number 4. The door she came in through. Before the shift starts, before the chart is picked up, before the corridor is walked, there is the entrance. In many segregated institutions, Black professionals were directed to secondary or service entrances as a matter of understood custom. The enforcement was rarely written down. In 1939, the ANA's own president offered to escort NACGN President Estelle Massey Riddle Osborne through a hotel's service entrance rather than challenge the segregation directly. It was treated as a practical arrangement, not an outrage. In hospitals, the front lobby, the main elevator, certain dining rooms and staff lounges carried the same unspoken direction. Dorothy enters before dawn. Cold metal handle of a side door. The particular smell of a linoleum hallway before the morning staff arrives. Footsteps on a back staircase before the front elevator opens for the day. She uses the entrance she has always used. Nobody had to tell her which one it was. Number 3. The law that built the room. Here is the part that cannot be explained away as custom or prejudice alone. The Hill-Burton Act of 1946, the Federal Hospital Survey and Construction Act, funded the construction of thousands of hospitals across the United States. It was the single largest expansion of hospital infrastructure in the country's history. It also contained a provision that was, at the time of its passage, the only instance in the 20th century that racial segregation was codified directly into a federal spending law. Separate but equal, written into the text, held in place until a federal court struck it down in Simpkins v. Moses H. Cone Memorial Hospital in 1963. Civil rights activists in the 1950s had a name for the hospitals it funded: Deluxe Jim Crow. The hospital where Dorothy works may have been built or expanded with Hill-Burton money. The brass plaque near the entrance. The smell of newer paint in a ward without windows. The federal government designed the floor plan. The basement ward, the separate corridor, the entrance she came in through, these were not accidents of custom. They were infrastructure. They were funded. Number 2. The sign that came down. The signs came down. After Simpkins in 1963, after the Civil Rights Act in 1964, after Medicare took effect in 1966, hospitals across the country desegregated in a matter of months. The colored ward signs were removed. The separate entrances were no longer enforced. The legal architecture that had built the segregated hospital was dismantled. But when many Black hospitals closed, losing their middle-class patients and staff to better-resourced white institutions that white patients still preferred, the communities those hospitals had served lost something that didn't come back. The NACGN had already been dissolved in 1,951 inches, the expectation that ANA integration would carry Black nurses forward. By 1971, Black nurses had reconvened as the National Black Nurses Association because the ANA had not done what was needed. The metal bracket unscrews from the wall, the pale rectangle on the painted surface where the sign used to be. Dorothy is still in the same hospital. The charge nurse chart still doesn't carry her name. The pay envelope has the same number inside. The path to promotion has not opened. The sign came down. The rule it described stayed in the room. Number 1. The uniform that couldn't protect her. Look at the uniform again. The white dress, the starched cap, the polished shoes, the name pin, that says RN, in letters that are accurate and verified and legally recognized. She is standing in a building that cannot function without her. She has passed the boards. She has the credential. She has the clinical hours. From across the room, she is indistinguishable from every other nurse on the floor. The system did not see it that way. The cap told the story of a school with fewer resources. The title she had earned was not reliably used. The ward she was assigned to was chosen before she arrived. The patient behind the closed door exercised a preference the hospital honored. The school she had fought to enter had been designed to remain closed. The professional membership she paid for was a courtesy. The charge nurse position was not available. The pay envelope contained a different number. The entrance she used was not the front door. The building itself had been funded by a law that codified the arrangement in federal language. Every one of those rules ran on the same logic. She could perform the work, she could hold the credential, she could keep the uniform immaculate for the 100th morning in a row. The system had decided, in advance, that her professional future required a separate set of terms. The uniform was not the problem. The uniform was what she wore into a building that was reading it differently than it was written. Dorothy is back at the mirror. The cap is still perfectly pinned. The shoes are polished. The name pin says RN. At the beginning of this, the uniform looked like proof of training, of licensure, of professional standing. It was all of those things. It was also something else, a daily act of insistence. She wore the exact credentials the system kept trying to make optional. If someone in your family wore a uniform that carried more weight than anyone in the building was willing to read, tell us below. Subscribe and follow us to the next set of rules nobody wrote down.